Welcome, everyone. For those of you who are new here, good to see you. For those who are returning, good to see you again. Just a friendly reminder to please turn your video off. Not that I don't want to see your faces, but just for the recording and for the people who watch this later. I'm glad to see some familiar faces in here. Awesome. Well, I think we're going to dive into things today. I'm really excited about today's session. We are going over something a little bit different than our normal relay focused workshops, which are more linear, deterministic workflows. But today we are going to be talking about Claude Code and Claude Cowork and how we can use that to run and set up efficient marketing teams. And so we'll go through a few slides, kind of talk about what the correct way to think about using these and building systems with it. And then we will leave with actually building a few different skills that you can use and understand about how to implement them into your business or into wherever you work. We have Charles, who's um, in here as our wonderful co-host. He will be taking any questions in the chat. So please drop some questions. I really like to make these sessions interactive. So if there's something that you don't understand or some specific use case to something that you're trying to build, then please drop it in there and I'll make sure I answer it before the end of the day. So without further ado, let me get my screen share going and we can dive into things. Awesome. So today's workshop, like I said, is specifically about Claude Code for CMOs. In the next 45 minutes, we will walk through how to make sure that you set up your environment correctly. This is very crucial for setting the foundation for everything else you build in the future. And then we'll run through the two different skills that we have planned out for today. And then if we have some time, we can get into specific workflows that you guys are trying to build. Um, we'll also talk a little bit high level about like what marketing workflows are worth automating. There's definitely a opportunity cost and development costs that comes with this. These are also things that will have to be maintained. We'll build the working tool, and then I'll make sure to share all of the files that we produced today with you guys here at the end so you can take them. But hopefully, you'll feel confident in being able to build them yourself. So, the big mindset shift that we are really trying to focus on is how do you go from just using the normal chat window, whether you use Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, where you're using one window to ask a specific set of questions that lacks a memory. It doesn't have context of who your brand is. If your business, it doesn't know who your ideal customer profile is. You can't set any standards. So if there's tone of voice standards or writing styles, essentially every session is starting cold. And at scale, you're really not harnessing all of the components and the benefits that AI has to offer. And so what Claude Code introduces and Claude Cowork specifically, I'll explain the difference of the two in a second. You are able to build up a memory and have proprietary persistent content and information that's configured for you or your business. So everything lives out of a root folder. It makes sure it reads that context before every session. So it already knows what you have going on in your business, or if you're setting this up for your personal life. And it's able to produce outputs that are calibrated to your company. And so you eliminate the generic responses and having to start those sessions every time. And so it really becomes truly powerful and what I think is the first time we're seeing AI kind of deliver on all the promises of agentic workflows and actually being able to operate independently from you as the individual user. So we'll go through today and we'll set up how to install Claude Code on your machine, make sure that we set up the workspace properly. We're then going to build a proprietary foundation layer. And all that means is a series of files that we need to be in the root folder of where we're working to be able to set up that context that we're talking about. Then the two demo tools that we're going to review today and build live are the campaign brief generator. So this is great for briefing internal teams or external teams, a specific campaign. And sorry about that. And to make sure that we include all that information, and so you can get a structured brief in 90 seconds. And then we'll do a LinkedIn competitor research tool. This one's fun because we'll connect to Relay to use one of their MCP tools. And I can get into MCPs here in a bit. But essentially, we're pulling information from another website and then bringing it back in to create a competitor research skill. Then we'll show where we can save those in our local folder and be able to share them with the team as well. So, the first few things that we need to build is this Claude MD. MD is a markdown file if you're not familiar, but it's a little bit more elevated version of a text file. So, it's nothing too complicated. If you open a markdown file, you'll probably be able to understand a fair amount of what is actually being written there. So, it doesn't look like gibberish or code. And this is going to be the foundation layer. So this is going to have context of who you are, what your company does, who you're targeting, how you're positioning yourself. And this is really the main folder or the main file that every time you go and interact with Claude Cowork, it's reading this first so it's able to frame its lens. Essentially, each skill that we produce after that is also a markdown file. And what Claude has done, which is very smart, is the way they structure these markdown files is there is a title and a short description at the top of each file. And so when you're prompting, it can go and load that first beginning part of the file and understand what is in that skill or that file format before pulling the entire document. What that means for you as a user is it actually uses significantly less context and tokens. Tokens are kind of the currency of AI. And so it's able to understand what it has access to without loading in the full document. Also makes everything much faster. And then, so we'll make the campaign brief skill, the competitor research brief skill, and the starter skill. We'll also talk about something called a manifest file. And a manifest file is high level. Think of it like an index to a book. It just has context of what is all available to it on your machine and in your folder. So the reason this is proprietary and how this is actually building a competitive moat for you and your business is a good question about OpenClaw. I'll get to that in 1 second. So generic AI produces generic outputs. And so what we're doing here is we're building so much more context and information on your business and who you're actually trying to tackle. And so if you think about as you build these over time, you become and you're able to build and replicate a lot of the same workflows that your employees do or you do on a daily basis. And so what we have to kind of shift our mindset from is instead of having task-based roles, you want to start thinking about workflows. And so if you think about how your company operates from all the way from getting a client, if you're a service business, getting a client to fulfilling the client, or if you're more of a software company, like how you acquire a customer, get them onboarded, get them using customer support, you can actually map each step of that process into a workflow. And what skills allow you to do is create and automate one specific task in that workflow. But as you build those skills up over time and you build orchestration layers, so like an agent that can deploy all of those skills at the correct time, you're actually able to build this idea of agentic autonomous work. And so what we need at first is the baseline layer of who your ICP is, what your positioning is, what good looks like, in a very deterministic way, and your history, what you've done previously, data. We can start doing some self learning models, etc. Before we jump into building things, we had a question on OpenClaw. OpenClaw, for those who don't know, is an open sourced AI model that came out, probably about a month ago at this point, and it actually was released before Claude released their Cowork. Essentially, it allowed you to do a lot of the same things that I'm describing today. It builds memory and logic files. The biggest differentiator is that it ran and could do automated tasks. So you could actually set up specific times that you wanted a task to run. So an example of that is like every Monday morning, give me a look through my calendar, look through my email, look through Slack, and give me a summary of what I'm going to deal with this week. And so you can set it on a schedule to be able to produce a deliverable or actually take some action. Um, and since then, Claude Cowork has released scheduled tasks, essentially making OpenClaw obsolete, or the benefits that they were leading with not necessary anymore. And so you can see that all these companies are kind of racing to build this idea of agentic workflow, and Claude is definitely leading the charge right now. So the two tools again that we're going to build are the creating a brief for a launch. So when you call a tool, you're going to use a series of keywords. You can say that tool one is generating brief. See, it's picking up on the keywords of what the brief is, or that we're wanting to start a brief, what the brief is for. So in this case, a Q3 product launch. And it will actually run that skill. And then on skill two, tool two, excuse me, it will be researching a specific competitor, what they're posting on LinkedIn, and use that to inform some new LinkedIn content that I can produce. Awesome. We're going to dive into it today. For anyone on this call, I'm offering a free 13-minute strategy session. If you scan this QR code, you get all of the project files that we went over today and what we're going to build, as well as a 13-minute session with me where we can kind of talk through your go to market and see what's possible for you guys. Awesome. I'm going to close this out and jump into Claude. So there are three sections to Claude Desktop now. We have Claude Chat, which you all might be familiar with. This is where you can just, have a conversation, go back and forth. Claude Cowork, if you come here, this is what we'll be covering today, which is essentially Claude Code, which might sound a little bit scary because it sounds like you're coding things. For us non-technical users, it can be a little intimidating. But what they've done is made Claude Code a little bit more user-friendly. And Claude Cowork allows you to access a lot of the same features and a lot of the same benefits of Claude Code with a little bit more of a user-friendly front end to it. And so all that Claude Cowork is doing differently than chat is it's accessing your local machine. So before, when you would type in something in Claude Chat, it was sending that out like a website, pulling a request, and it's using the web wherever the website server is hosting it, it's using that computing power. And so you're really limited by the basic functions of the web. What Claude Cowork and Claude Code allow you to do is harness the ability of your machine that you're running this off of. So that's the big first kind of foundational shift for you to understand. That allows benefits where you have more processing power, more immediate kind of production of things, and you are able to store things locally. And that can be anything from markdown files that we're going to be talking about today. But then when you start to kind of open your eyes to seeing that it can code micro websites. So that presentation that we were just going through was a microsite that Claude Cowork built for me. It can run scripts. It can get very advanced very quickly. And you can start building custom tools for yourself. And then with the ability to use these connectors, you can then harness the functionality and the benefits of other platforms' tools. So like you can see I have Attio, my CRM. I have Circleback, which records all my calls, Notion, Slack, Google Chrome. So it's able to access all of these components and interact with them in a way that you weren't able to before. So when you see Claude Cowork first, you're going to see a familiar chat window. But the first thing you want to do just to keep things organized is set up a working project folder. So if you select this drop down, you can see local folders on my computer. You can see base station is where I typically work out of for my business. But today I created a new folder in my documents called marketing CMO. Yes, Chelsea, that's first big distinction is you have to be using the Claude desktop app. So this is the only way that you're able to access this functionality for it to build and use files on your computer. Some people who are overly cautious, not to say that it's a bad idea, are buying separate computers to run this just so you don't allow Claude to accidentally access any of your personal files. So I would be a little bit careful if you're a little bit more reluctant to that. But the best way to kind of alleviate that fear is actually creating a dedicated folder. And then you'll see as we're working, it will continuously ask you if you want to give certain things permission and just make sure that you're only giving permission to that specific folder. So I'm going to connect it to my marketing CMO folder, which you can see it's confirming. I'm allowing it to change things in that folder. So again, I'm only allowing it to make modifications to things in this folder. And essentially all it's doing is over here, you can see my browser window, my marketing CMO in documents. It now has access to this empty folder. So not a lot of not a lot of things it can do yet. And the first folder we want to set up, or the first file we want to set up, is the Claude Markdown file. And so I'm just going to type in here and be like, I'm setting up a new working folder on my desktop, on my computer called Marketing CMO. And I need to create um, a Claude.markdown file and manifest file for my future projects. And what you can see is in Claude Cowork, there are a few different things. So you can see it has access to the folder. It's seeing Claude MD as instructions. So it's referencing this folder, this file. And then you can see it's showing progress. If we have a multi-step sequence, it will break those into individual tasks and show you them here in the progress folder. You can see it went and it looked at the folder. It says the folder is empty and it recognizes that we need to build these. And so now it's asking a few different follow-up questions for us to define how this folder is going to be used. So it's first asking what the primary purpose of the marketing CMO workspace is. And I'm just going to say it's for fractional CMO work. You can see it's actually pulling from another folder that it knows who I am and what my business is, Catalyst. So it's making some assumptions there. But I'm just going to say fractional CMO work and what type of deliverables will live in this folder. We will have some brand assets, some reports, some strategy docs, and content and copy. Select all that may apply, and then hit next. And should Claude Markdown reference a specific company or client, or keep it general? I'm going to say specific client for now, and we'll go in and fill that in so it has a little bit. So as it's working, it looks like we have a question from George. Do I have to have these files saved on locally? Can they be stored on Google Drive? That's a good question. So file storage, you can actually see that I'm running this off of my iCloud Drive, which actually is not best practice for any system that stores files in a cloud. You might run into some issues down the road based on what is actually on your local drive versus in the cloud. So, for those of you that don't know, when you store things in a cloud based folder, those files show an alias always on your computer. But if they're an older file, when you actually click to open it, it has to re download that specific file. And so it's not actually there on your machine. And so when you go to reference some files over time, you might run into some issues. And so, George, if you're trying to produce or create a folder that other people can access, this is where a lot of people will connect to like GitHub and actually run things locally and then store them in a folder or a GitHub to be able to access them from multiple places. So it's asking some additional follow up questions here on what the company name is, industry, and ICP. And I'm going to go in and just fill this out B2B services. Once we have this kind of template set, I will go in and give it a little bit more specifics. But what is one of the big changes with Cowork is it's actually understanding what you're trying to accomplish here and asking follow up questions to get you closer to an output that you're going to be satisfied with. Where before it would just take what you said at face value and just produce that. So you can see it's writing the file. You can open this toggle and see kind of what it's doing behind the scenes. You can see it has everything it needs. So it's creating a Claude Markdown file and a manifest file. And you can see as these are being built, they're starting to appear in the folder. If I come over and open this, you can see, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Um, you can see uh, just text essentially. You can see so the workspace is for fractional CMO engagements. The work produced here is client facing and executive level. Treat every deliverable as it will be presented to a board or CEO without modification. Before starting any task, hit check manifest markdown in the folder. And you can see that there's different deliverable types, output standards. The default format is to docx, no filler language. So you can see we're getting some kind of general rules that we should follow on everything we create. It's aligning on what the folder conventions are. Just you can see that it's telling the system prompt to understand where each of these files are that we're going to be creating. This will be helpful for organization. So anytime we do something for research or strategy or reporting, it will go into its respective folder. But you can see Markdown's very user friendly. It's something that you can go in and just modify and edit in plain English. And so, it becomes very readable and very tangible for non technical users. The manifest is also created, and you can see it's telling it how to use this file. So it's going to read this file at the start of every session in this folder. Tier 1 files are always read first before any work begins. Tier 2 files are read when relevant to the task. Tier 3 is the output. So, very similarly, although this will maintain higher level, manifest is for the whole working project. And then you can create specific Claude markdown files for each subfolder. So, what this might end up looking like is if I come in here and some people create new folders for each project. So, you can have projects, or you can have an active folder. And then in here, have them be specific roles. So you could do like marketing, sales, something like that. So there are two different ways, whatever organizational structure that works best for you. And for this, I'm going to just focus on having a projects folder. And then within each project folder, I can have a new task with each one having its own Claude file. So a little bit on organization later. You can always clean things up. That's the nice thing about these being just local files on your machine. You literally can edit and interact with them the same way you would with any other folder on your computer. So now I'm going to say I want to create a new project, and this will be in my project file. And we said that we were going to build a brief generator. So you can see I'm giving it context on where I want to store the file, and then say, I want to build in this project, I want to build a skill that takes my raw input of ideas and builds a brief for my internal team. This needs to be formatted properly and make sure if you don't have all the information you need, ask follow-up questions to get the full picture. So essentially what I've done is I've told it where I want to store this file in my projects folder, and then what the idea of this, then where I want to store it, and then what I'm trying to do. And so what I'm trying to do is build a skill every time that I just have an idea for a project or something that I want to share with my team. I want to be able to just ramble into Claude and have it format it into a brief to fulfill that. And so I'm just going to hit run and see if it asks any questions. Yes, Chelsea, all of the prompts and all of the files that we create today will be available from that QR code. And so if you scan that, I'll make sure to add it at the end. It will also be on the recording here for you guys to access. So it's asking some follow-up questions. So yep, we want to have it in a separate projects folder. And these will be, it's asking what types of briefs. So a campaign brief, a content brief, a project brief. I'm going to say multiple types. And who's the internal team receiving these briefs? It's going to be a mixed team. I'm going to keep things just kind of general and vague, but you can see we can make it very specific depending on our use case. So if you have to produce PRD or you're constantly briefing your creative team on a campaign idea, you can make specific individual files for that. And this might seem like a little bit more work up front, but you'll see once we start using these skills, the benefit they have in the long run. Once you define it once, the way that you can use 1 and 2 skills together start compounding exponentially. So it's coming in here and it's saying, all right, cool. Here's my plan. We're going to create a projects folder in your workspace. We're going to create a brief builder skill. It's going to ask what type of brief type is needed, fill in the missing questions or ask them, and then output to a docx. We're going to set up 3 test cases, run them, and open the eval viewer, iterate based on my feedback. So it's letting you know what it's going to do. You can see in here, it's showing the progress tab as well. And you can see if you watch the folder in real time, what it's starting to do. Any questions so far? We'll give this another second here. And what's really powerful is in Claude Cowork, just like chat, you can be running multiple projects or workflows at the same time. So once you start adopting this, you can start, running multiple projects at the same time to really be able to expedite your work. Yes. So these skills are going to be automatically updated as you work on more projects. Skills are called based off of keywords. So once we get these done, I'll show you, we can actually look into the skill file and it will tell you the keywords it's assigned to using it. So now if I open a brand new session or a new window in this folder, I could say, I want to create a brief, a campaign brief. The campaign is about X, Y, and Z, whatever. And it will, because we said the keyword campaign brief, it will know to pull on that skill. One thing that's cool is you can see that because the output is going to be in a Word document file, it realized that it didn't have the skill to create a Word document. And so it went and it installed this skill that's actually a Claude skill. It comes default with every Claude program. It went and found and created that. So now it can create doc files. Yeah, good question. So the question is, what's the key difference between ChatGPT's ability to set up system prompt and upload context files versus Claude skills and markdown files? So at the base layer, they function very similarly. When you set up a GPT with specific context files or system prompt, you're limited to everything in being in that one workspace. It's the same thing as coming over here into chat and creating a new project folder and just loading in specific information into one project, right? You're limited to the information in that project folder. What you can do here is you're able to access all of the things, all of the folders at the same time and do multi-step work. And so it can start pulling in different folders in sequence. It looks similar right now because we're doing very one-to-one or creating one skill. We're asking it to accomplish that one skill. You could do that same setup in a ChatGPT project or a Claude chat project. But where it becomes very valuable is being able to set up multi-step process. Once you have a set of skills, back to thinking about setting up skills for a team member, right? So let's take content strategists for a second or copywriter, right? They might, if they are to write a LinkedIn post, they're going to look at my post performance and my analytics from last week. They're going to browse LinkedIn and they're going to get some inspiration from what other competitors or thought leaders in the space are going to do. They're going to go and do some research to see if there's any interesting data or statistics they can include in a post. They're going to write a draft. They're going to QA check it. Then they're going to post it. Right. So we just listed 6 skills that we can produce and we can create. And then from a Claude Cowork session, I can just say, write me next week's LinkedIn post, and it will go through each step of those 6 skills to produce a fully formed LinkedIn post. So the power of this really becomes when you start stacking multiple skills on top of each other to get to a final output. Cool. So we have test outputs where we can come in here and open them. So in projects, hold on. There we go. You can now see that we have, it just filled in generic random information here based off of knowing that I work with a lot of fintech companies. It's done it for a made up Meridian fintech company. But you can see this is how it's going to structure the brief. So we have an objective, target audience, key message, channels and formats, budget, KPIs, team, and owners. So a really solid starting point for a brief. We can see how it's created a content brief, goal, target audience, angle POV, key takeaways, supporting points, call to action. All the things that would be in a standard brief and project brief. So it's done a really good job at creating a first pass at what these will be. And you can see if we look at this brief builder skill, you can see it starts with a description. This is what I was talking about. It can load this description before it loads the whole rest of the document, which clears up and frees up a lot of tokens to make this a lot much faster. But you can see it defines what the skill does, the step-by-step approach, what the templates are, output standards, and edge cases. That is something that you can share. So I could take this, download it, and share it with Charles, my teammate. And so now when he says, hey, I need to create a brief, it's following the same format. So while we have a few more minutes, I'm going to show one more example that's going to pull in something called an MCP. If you're not familiar with MCP, they are a model context protocol, which again isn't very helpful, but it's a way to use and tap into other softwares. Similar to an API, if you're familiar with that, they are just structured in a way that is a little bit more friendly for an LLM. And so in Relay, we can come in here. And what we usually do is create new workflow. But you can see you can actually create an MCP server. And I have one created already. And it is a LinkedIn profile finder. And so what I've done is I've connected it to my Claude. I can do another session on how to set these up. but I've given it access to different tools. So it can search LinkedIn for a profile, get LinkedIn person's posts, and find people's based on company and role. And I can connect this to my Claude. You can just see, you just follow these instructions. It's pretty straightforward. And what happens is now, when I'm in here in my marketing CMO, I can pull in the LinkedIn searcher from Relay. And so what I'm going to do is say every week, well, first, I want to create a new skill that every week goes and uses the LinkedIn. Oh, sorry, just let me pull the name, the LinkedIn searcher. And I'm actually going to switch over to using Whisper, which is allows you just to speak to type. Um, and look at the past post performance of Will Leatherman's LinkedIn and use that to analyze and compare to Jacob Banks from Relay's LinkedIn and see where there's maybe some learnings on how Will can improve his LinkedIn content to sound a little bit more like Jacob. He posts a lot about AI workflows, and I want to take some learnings from his posts and use them to inspire my content. And once you've taken all those learnings, put them into a content brief for me that I can review on Monday morning. So you can see all I've done is just simply outlined what I want to do, what I want to accomplish on what time period. And it's going to look through the skills it has access to. And the first thing it does is it's going to go in and look at the instructions, right? So it gets context on who I am, that same kind of Claude file that we created at the beginning. And it's going to use this to frame everything that it's doing. And so what I'm trying to accomplish here is show you the benefit of multi-step skills. So it's going to set it on a schedule. It means every week. It's going to do 2 LinkedIn researcher calls. So one to look at my content, one to look at Jacob's content. And then it's going to do an analysis on what's performing well. I'm just going to do topic themes to lean into. Again, it's asking some follow-up questions. Where should the brief be delivered? We're just going to save it to the folder for now, but you can send it to Slack or send it to Notion. And then make some recommendations. And then it's going to use that same content brief skill that we just created and format it in that file. Awesome. So here is the plan that it has produced. It's going to pull Will's recent LinkedIn content, going to find Jacob's content, pair topic coverage, and then output a Monday morning content brief saved as docx in my folder. Scheduled to run every day at 6 a.m. or every Monday at 6 a.m. And now it's going and writing the skills it needs to produce this. So you can see it came over here and it is creating this schedule skill that is telling it when to run that skill. And you can see in this dropdown what the actual logic is that's happening. Something that happened kind of quickly, but it asked permission to run and produce files from my terminal. Your terminal, if you don't know, is essentially a way to access your computer through code. And so that's how it's actually creating all these files on your behalf. It is getting access to terminal and then running sequence of commands to produce content. So found the schedule package and packaged that up, created scheduled tasks. And you can see it is asking permission to schedule this. We can check the output of what it's doing. Great. It's scheduled to run Monday at 6 a.m., but it's going to do a live test run now to make sure that the LinkedIn lookups actually work. So it's actually running the skill. So you can see it's pulling on the relay request that we set up in Relay, and it's actually running both these simultaneously. So it's running the search for me, and it's running the search for Jacob. You can see it's actually using the information I provided, which was just a name and the company, to find an individual. But I could have just given it the specific URL. If this is something that you run frequently, you might save a little bit of cost by, yeah, you can see. So it didn't find Jacob. What I can do is while it's running, I'm just going to drop in his actual URL, which is just going to update the prompt to stop its search, from finding Jacob and just skipping a few steps. And it will write that into the skill. So now it has context of what Jacob's LinkedIn profile is, and it will use that in the skill moving forward. Jacob, by the way, is the founder of Relay. So I hope he doesn't mind that we're scraping some ideas from him. So you can see it's now creating a little analysis. The themes that I talk about, the themes that Jacob talks about, both feeds pulled. Now it's updating the skill and generating the first content brief. And so while we're analyzing this as it's happening, again, the real benefit of this is now it will happen automatically once we define this skill once. And so um, I, in theory, can just let this run automatically once this is, built the way that I like it. And every week be able to go to my folder or my Slack or wherever, and come in here and pull the, I don't know why these aren't. I think this is the issue I was talking about with the cloud-based folders. The files don't appear right away. But the but yeah, so then every week I can just go in and look at the content brief that I need to write, and maybe I write that or I send it to my copywriter, or maybe I send it to my copywriting skill agent, and it actually produces this for me. And once you start experimenting with all of the connectors that you're able to interact with, a lot of this, the ideas just kind of become endless of how you're able to connect to, Slack, a CRM, your call recordings. Here we're connecting to LinkedIn. It really becomes pretty eye opening. Okay, so it generated the brief and it's actually going and checking to make sure that it added the link or the URL for Jacob that I added, that it put it back into the skill. And it's giving a little bit of a synopsis. So I have my Monday morning brief here, and you can see here's Will's content for the last 7 days. Strong week. Highest performing post had 208 reactions. Talked about what it is. My current themes are B2B content strategy, founder-led content systems, AI and go-to-market, and LinkedIn as a demand gen channel. It gives a synopsis of what Jacob is posting. See if I can make this bigger. The gap. So here are suggestions of topics I should own. The AI workflow stack for go-to-market teams. Show your actual agents. Cool. And then a few different post ideas. So really powerful way to just get some ideas and inspiration from other individuals. And of course, you can keep building on this. Like I could create a skill that takes a content brief and writes a LinkedIn post and Twitter post based on the brief. So good question, George. The MCP so LinkedIn would have to have an MCP for that to work. So the question is, can MCP directly connect my Claude to my LinkedIn account? Just the same way that any software has to create an API, which essentially allows you to use their software via a network request, like an API. An MCP is no different. And so LinkedIn doesn't have a public MCP or an API. Um, Actually, they do have an API for developers only, and you have to be approved for that. But they don't have an MCP. And so what I'm doing is I'm using Relay, which has access to LinkedIn automatically. If you use their tool, you are able to perform these functions on LinkedIn. And I'm using Relay to set up the MCP server. And so I can come in here and create a MCP for Claude, name it Twitter. And you can see when you set up a new MCP server, it's asking you what apps or tools you want to give it access to. So you can give it access to LinkedIn, like I did, and what skill sets it's able to use. But for this, I said Twitter. So I want to do it for search for tweets, and you can add multiple things. Get most recent tweets from a profile URL. Yeah. Get public Twitter profile data from URL. And so now if I connect this to Claude, I can perform all of these actions. It is like unlock those actions that I can perform now. Awesome. So now it took that brief and I told it to write a LinkedIn post writer skill. It's obviously not going to be that good, given that I haven't defined what a good LinkedIn post looks like. But you can see it's making an effort to produce it as well as a Twitter post. So what I would do now is go in and actually create a skill for writing a Twitter post and writing a LinkedIn post that um, more dialed in to what actually should be used on the platform and what makes it sound like me, and we'll get a better output. But you can see the way that you can stack skills allows you to define a workflow or a process once. And now, whether on a schedule or on a manual call, we can run that workflow automatically. Some other examples of things that workflows that I built is I produce a lot of custom proposals for clients. And so the process of making a copy of my proposal template deck, doing an analysis of how we're going to structure it, filling in each of those slides in the proposal, packaging it up, and sending it used to take 4 to 6 hours. I was able to break each step of that workflow down into a set of skills. So now I can just drop a raw transcript from a sales call, give it a few, it's going to ask me a couple follow up questions. After I answer those, it goes and builds the complete deck based off of proposals that have been successful previously. And so you start entering in this self learning function of based off of the proposals that become closed won. How did we structure those? How did we explain the narrative for us to write them like that again? And so that becomes a skill that takes a few minutes to run now instead of 5 to 6 hours. Well, thank you, everyone. I know we went pretty in depth here, but feel free to drop any questions. I will hang around a little bit to answer them. And yeah, again, thank you so much. Feel free to let me pull that up again. Feel free to book some time with me. I would love to do a one-on-one session with anyone here to go through things we can automate for you guys, as well as answer any specific questions you guys might be having. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week.